My name is Julia Thompson. I'm 36 years old, and up until last winter, I believed that family was everything, that no matter what happened in life, your family would be the one group of people who'd always have your back. That belief was shattered last December on a cold Minnesota morning when I found out my entire family had planned a luxury holiday trip without me. Not just any trip, but our annual winter family reunion, one that I had helped organize for the last 9 years. The worst part? They weren't even going to tell me. I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. For most of my life, I was the reliable one. The daughter who never missed a birthday, who rearranged her work schedule to help dad after his surgery, who gave up weekends to babysit her nephews, and who opened up her home to family in need, no questions asked. In fact, just 10 months before the betrayal, I had welcomed my brother Sean and his wife Lacey into my home after they lost theirs in a financial crash. I told them it was temporary, 6 months tops. They were grateful at first, or at least they said they were. I lowered the rent to nearly nothing and gave them the basement suite with its own bathroom and kitchenette. I even helped them set up an office for Sean's remote job. I thought I was doing the right thing, supporting my family, being the kind of sister I'd want if roles were reversed. But sometimes kindness becomes invisible when people start expecting it. And over time, appreciation turned into entitlement. If you've ever been the one who gives and gives, only to be left out when it matters most, this story is for you. Because what happened that winter didn't just challenge my beliefs. It changed the way I saw everything about loyalty, love, and what it truly means to belong. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly why I changed the locks. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? Drop your experience in the comments. Your voice matters. And if stories like this speak to you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We share true-to-life stories every week that remind you, you're not alone. At first, having Sean and Lacey live with me felt like the right thing to do. They moved in mid-February, just after losing their condo in a foreclosure. It had been a tough year for them. Sean's freelance consulting business had taken a hit, and Lacey had left her job at a local boutique, citing toxic management. When they arrived with boxes and strained smiles, I welcomed them with open arms. I even stocked the fridge with Lacey's favorite oat milk and bought extra towels for the guest bath. "You can stay here until you get back on your feet," I told them, meaning every word. "6 months tops, okay?" "Thank you, Jules," Lacey said, hugging me tightly. "You have no idea how much this means to us." For a while, things were fine. We shared dinners once or twice a week, traded grocery runs, and took turns walking my dog Penny. But as spring turned into summer, little things started shifting, and not in a good way. Sean started leaving dishes in the sink. Not just one or two, but full-on pasta explosions with red sauce congealing overnight. Lacey had a habit of taking over the laundry room for hours, then leaving piles of damp clothes in the dryer. My once tidy home began feeling like a shared college apartment, and not in a nostalgic way. Still, I kept brushing it off. They were family. They were stressed. Things would get better. But by September, it was clear they had no intention of leaving anytime soon. They'd redecorated the basement without asking, hung new curtains, mounted a massive flat-screen TV, and even moved in a secondhand sectional couch. When I asked about it, Sean waved it off. "We're just making it cozy. You said to make ourselves at home, remember?" What I hadn't said was, "Turn my basement into your permanent den." Even worse were the comments, subtle at first, little digs during dinner. "Must be nice to be able to afford fresh flowers every week," Lacey would say, her tone light but pointed. Or Sean, after I mentioned a promotion. "Wow, some people are just lucky, huh?" It was as if my success made them uncomfortable, as if every accomplishment I'd worked for was somehow a threat. By October, I found myself avoiding my own kitchen. They'd taken over the fridge space, used my cookware without cleaning it, and invited friends over for football Sundays without checking in. The house no longer felt like mine. It felt like I was intruding in their comfort zone. My best friend Monica noticed something was off during one of our weekly coffee chats. "You seem tense," she said, sipping her chai latte. Still no word on Sean and Lacey moving out? I shook my head. No plans, no hints. I'm starting to feel like I'm just funding their lifestyle. She looked at me with that straight shooting stare she always gave when I tried to sugarcoat things. Julia, you're being taken advantage of. And the longer you let it slide, the harder it'll be to fix. You need to set a deadline. I knew she was right. But something inside me, guilt maybe, or fear of being the mean sister, held me back. Maybe after the holidays, I muttered. I don't want to ruin Christmas. That was the moment Monica raised her eyebrow. Honey, if you think setting healthy boundaries is ruining Christmas, you might want to rethink who's actually ruining it. I laughed, but deep down something twisted in my chest. I had opened my home to family, and now I was the one tiptoeing around my own house, too afraid to upset people who clearly had no issue disrespecting me. But still, despite everything, I kept holding out hope that the holidays would bring us closer. That maybe, just maybe, we'd spend Christmas in that snowy cabin again, drinking cocoa by the fire and playing board games like we used to. I didn't know it yet, but that hope would soon turn to heartbreak, and everything I thought I knew about family was about to unravel. It was a Thursday evening in early December. Snow had begun dusting the sidewalks outside, and the air held that sharp, brittle cold that always made my nose tingle. I got home a little earlier than usual. My final project meeting of the day had been canceled, a rare gift in the whirlwind of pre-holiday deadlines. I was looking forward to heating up some soup, curling under a blanket, and maybe watching one of those cheesy holiday movies with Penny at my feet. But as I stepped quietly through the front door, I heard voices floating up from the basement. Lacey's voice, laughter, then Sean. I paused on the staircase, surprised. Normally, they didn't talk much when I was home, more likely to bury themselves in their Netflix cocoon downstairs. But this time, they were animated, excited even. Oh my God, that view is insane, Lacey said. I can't believe there's a hot tub in every room. And did you see the ski trails? Literally outside the back door, Sean replied. This place is next level, way better than that stuffy old Vermont cabin. I stood frozen halfway down the stairs. What ski trails? What hot tubs? What were they talking about? Then Lacey said the words that made my stomach turn. I'm so glad your parents agreed to the change this year. Honestly, I couldn't handle another week stuck in that tiny cabin with Julia trying to organize themed cocoa nights and morning hikes. Sean laughed. She means well, but yeah, it's like a job interview wrapped in tinsel. My heart dropped. I clutched the railing, blood pounding in my ears. They were talking about Christmas, our family's winter reunion, the same one we'd done every year for nearly a decade, the same trip I had already blocked off time for, started prepping cookie recipes for, even bought matching scarves for everyone as stocking stuffers. They were planning it without me, still hoping, still needing to believe there had been some mistake. I walked downstairs. Sean and Lacey looked up, startled. Guilt flickered across both their faces. Oh, hey, Jules, Sean said awkwardly. Didn't hear you come in. I cut to the chase. What trip are you talking about? Lacey looked at Sean, who shrugged. Might as well tell her. We're going to Montana, Lacey said quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. Your parents booked this amazing resort, full ski in, ski out, fireplaces, spa packages, the whole 9 yards. I blinked. Montana? Since when? Since, October, Sean offered. It was Mom's idea. No, it wasn't. I knew my mother well enough to know she never made decisions like that without Vanessa, or now, apparently, Lacey, pushing her. Why wasn't I told? I asked, my voice trembling. Lacey looked down. We figured you were probably too busy with work to come. You always say you're swamped in December. I already requested time off, I said, my throat tightening. I made space for this trip. I bought you both gifts. You were going to let me find out when. Sean sighed, like I was the one making things difficult. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought maybe it'd be better if it was just the four of us this year. The four of you, I repeated. So I've been excluded. It's not like that, Lacey said quickly. It's just sometimes you make things complicated. Always planning. Always organizing. You're kind of intense on these trips. I stared at them, Stunned. I had planned those trips because no one else would, because our family would drift into chaos without someone stepping up. I had booked cabins, planned meals, pre-packed first aid kits, even made personalized playlists for our long drives. And now I was being painted as the overbearing one. I turned without another word and walked upstairs, my vision blurry. I needed answers. I needed to hear it from someone who had once promised they'd always include me. I dialed my mom. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, honey." "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "So, Montana?" A pause. Then, "Oh, you heard. You weren't going to tell me, were you?" "We were," she said, her tone defensive. "Eventually. We just thought, with how busy you always are, you might actually enjoy some quiet time this year." "Did Lacey and Sean suggest excluding me?" Another pause. "They mentioned you might be happier without the pressure of planning everything. And honestly, Julia, you do tend to take over." Take over. That phrase echoed in my head like a slap. "You all planned this behind my back," I said quietly. "For 2 months, while I was decorating the tree, while I was baking gingerbread for your care package, while I was planning cocoa nights." "Don't be so dramatic," Mom replied. "It's just one trip." No, it wasn't. It was the moment I realized that in my family's eyes, I had gone from being the glue to being expendable, and that realization would change everything. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the Christmas lights outside my window flickering like ghosts of a tradition that no longer belonged to me. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed that conversation with my mom, the way she said I'd take over, the way Sean and Lacey laughed at my cocoa nights, the way they all decided, together, that I wasn't worth including. Part of me kept wondering if I had somehow misunderstood, if maybe I had been too intense in the past. But every memory that surfaced only confirmed what I already knew. I had been the one holding it all together, and now they'd made me feel like a burden for doing so. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Lacey in the kitchen. She was wearing my robe, one of those plush white ones I'd gotten from a spa retreat the year before, and sipping coffee from my favorite mug, the one that read, "Strong women build strong worlds." The irony hit me like a punch. "Morning," she said, not even looking up from her phone. I poured myself a cup from the pot she'd brewed, letting the silence speak for itself. Then, as calmly as I could, I said, "Lacey, we need to talk." She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "About Montana?" "No, about everything." She leaned back against the counter. "Okay." "I opened my home to you and Sean because you needed help," I began. "I lowered the rent, gave you space, never once made you feel like you owed me anything." Lacey crossed her arms. "And we've always appreciated that." "Have you?" I interrupted. "Because it doesn't feel like appreciation. It feels like entitlement. Like my home, my time, my boundaries. None of it matters to you." Her lips tightened. "Wow, that's not fair." "What's not fair," I said evenly, "is planning a holiday trip behind my back while living under my roof and using my resources. What's not fair is mocking my effort to create memories just because you didn't like being reminded that I'm the one who makes things happen." Just then, Sean walked in, still groggy in pajama pants and a wrinkled t-shirt. "What's going on?" "She's upset about Montana," Lacey said quickly. Sean sighed and rubbed his face. "Come on, Julia. Don't make this into a thing. It's one Christmas." "No," I said, my voice sharper now. "It's not just Christmas. It's the years of showing up for everyone else while no one shows up for me. It's being treated like a hotel manager and a punching bag rolled into one." Sean rolled his eyes. "We thought you'd appreciate some space this year. You've always said December stresses you out." "That's not an excuse for excluding me from a family tradition I helped build." Lacey snorted. "You act like you're the victim in everything." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. The guilt I'd been carrying, the pressure to be the good sister, the accommodating daughter, the peacekeeper, it cracked, and something stronger came through. "I want to be clear," I said quietly. "This arrangement? It's coming to an end." Sean straightened. Wait, what does that mean? It means I'll be giving you both written notice today. 30 days to find a new place. You can't kick us out, not right before the holidays, Lacey snapped. I'm not kicking you out tonight, I said. I'm setting a boundary. You're grown adults. You have income. You have my parents. You'll figure it out. Sean looked stunned. Is this because of the trip? No, I said, looking at them both. It's because of the disrespect, the disregard, and because I finally realized if I don't start standing up for myself, no one will. I turned and walked away, heart pounding, hands shaking, but lighter than I'd felt in months. It was the beginning of something I hadn't given myself in a long time. Freedom. I spent that afternoon drafting the letter. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was factual, clear, and firm, just like Monica's boyfriend Adam had advised. He was a real estate attorney who had handled tenant disputes for years, and when I called him in a panic the night before, he calmly explained my rights. They've been living there for over 30 days, which makes them tenants, even without a lease, he said over speakerphone, while Monica sat beside me, holding my hand. But because they've never signed an agreement, you can treat this as a month-to-month situation. All you need is a written notice, 30 days in advance. You're well within your legal rights. I felt strange even needing to evict my own brother. But the facts were the facts. And if they could pretend I didn't exist during the holidays, then I had every right to reclaim my home. The next morning, after confirming Sean and Lacey had gone shopping for their pre-trip ski gear, I put my plan into motion. I called a locksmith and had all the exterior locks changed. I reprogrammed the security code on my alarm system. Then I went into the basement with boxes and packing materials and carefully gathered their essentials: clothing, toiletries, chargers, medications. I took pictures of everything, labeling boxes and placing them neatly on the covered porch. Finally, I taped the letter on the top box. You have 30 days to find alternate housing and collect the rest of your belongings. I will not allow further access to the house beyond agreed upon times. If you need to arrange pickup, please do so by contacting me via text. Then I locked the door behind me and sat on my couch, hands trembling but heart steady. The first call came an hour later, then another, then 20. My parents, my aunt, my cousin, who never texts me but suddenly had strong opinions. Every voicemail had the same theme. How could you? And it's Christmas. And family doesn't treat each other like this. But none of them had been in my kitchen when I was dismissed. None of them had to live in a house where they didn't feel welcome. None of them knew what it was like to be treated like an outsider in their own home. And then came the text from my mom. Mom, Vanessa just called us in tears. You've locked them out? What the hell is going on, Julia? Me. I've given them 30 days, legally and clearly stated. Their essentials are packed and safe. They're welcome to stay with you until they find a place. I need space now, Mom. Please respect that. After I hit send, I turned off my phone. I sat in silence for the first time in weeks. No arguments from the basement. No passive-aggressive footsteps. No laughter that excluded me. Just me, Penny, and peace. But peace doesn't come without consequences. That evening, I looked out the window as Sean and Lacey pulled into the driveway. Their expressions shifted from confusion to rage the second their keys didn't work. Lacey pounded on the door while Sean paced like a caged animal. When they saw the boxes on the porch, Lacey screamed my name, calling me every name in the book. I didn't open the door. I didn't even flinch. I simply watched as they took photos of the boxes, likely for social media ammunition, and drove off in silence. The next morning, the war began. Lacey posted a long, carefully curated post on Facebook about how her own sister threw her out just before Christmas and hinted that she was coping with the stress of starting a family in a hostile world. No mention of the luxury trip. No mention of months of rent-free living. No mention of how I had bought her oat milk for the first 3 months without asking for a dime. The comments flooded in. How heartless. What kind of sister does that? You deserve better, girl. Stay strong. And then, one that stung more than I expected. Sounds like Julia's jealous. That was when I realized I was being painted as the villain in a story I didn't even know was being written. I wanted to respond, to post screenshots, receipts, evidence, but I didn't. Instead, I logged off. I made myself a cup of tea. I lit a cinnamon candle. And I reminded myself why I did what I did. Not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. I had drawn a line, a boundary, a door that would only open again if it was truly safe to do so. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most loving thing I could have done for myself this Christmas. 2 days later, a formal envelope arrived at my doorstep. Thick cream paper, my full name typed in cold block letters, a return address from a law office I didn't recognize. For a moment, I just stared at it, like it might vanish if I didn't touch it. But it didn't. Inside was a letter from a lawyer representing Sean and Lacey. They were alleging an illegal eviction. The claim was riddled with half-truths, that I had forced them out without warning, that I had endangered their well-being by locking them out during the holidays, that they had been living peacefully and paying rent, and were now homeless. It was so twisted, I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I called Adam. He answered on the first ring. "Let me guess, you got a letter." I read him the contents word for word, voice shaking. "They're bluffing," he said calmly. "You gave 30 days notice. You documented everything. You even packed their essentials and left them safely on the porch. They don't have a leg to stand on." "But what if it gets messy?" I whispered. "What if they really try to sue?" "Then we go to court," he said simply. "And we win." Still, that letter did exactly what it was meant to do. It rattled me. That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by legal folders and a knot in my chest. Penny curled at my feet while I stared at the flickering lights on my tree. The Christmas I once looked forward to now felt like a battlefield. And then, as if on cue, came the final blow. An email from my mother. Subject line: family intervention. It read like a therapy session gone wrong. Paragraph after paragraph about how they were deeply concerned for my mental health, how I had isolated myself, how my irrational behavior pointed to burnout or depression, that they had spoken with a counselor and wanted me to attend a family therapy session, to work through my control issues. I blinked in disbelief. This wasn't care. It was calculated manipulation. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about losing control over me. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Adam and then shut my laptop. I walked outside, wrapped in my coat, letting the cold bite through my skin. For the first time in weeks, I looked up at the stars and breathed. I was tired, worn down, but something inside me had solidified. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was done. The next morning, my workplace receptionist buzzed my office. "Julia, there are 4 people in the lobby asking to see you. They say they're your family." I froze. Names? Eleanor and Richard Thompson, and a younger couple, Sean and Lacey. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. "Tell them I'm unavailable. If they don't leave, call security." 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with texts. Sean: "Really, you're hiding behind your desk now?" Mom: "I'm crying in the car. Is this what you wanted?" Lacey: "This is beyond cold. I hope you're proud." I turned off my phone. Again. That night I lit a fire, poured myself a glass of wine, and allowed myself to cry. Not because I doubted my decision, but because it hurt to realize how little my pain meant to them. I wasn't the problem. I was simply the first person in the family to say enough, and they couldn't handle it. 3 days before Christmas, I received a knock at the door. Not a text, not an email, not a voicemail laced with guilt. Just a gentle knock. I opened it to find Monica and Adam standing there, both bundled in coats, holding a bag that smelled unmistakably like Thai takeout. "No one should eat sad leftovers 3 days before Christmas," Monica said, waving the bag like a peace offering. "Also, you're not allowed to cry alone anymore." I smiled, for what felt like the first time in days. They came in, kicked off their boots, and set up dinner at my kitchen island like they'd lived here all along. It wasn't the polished, picture-perfect holiday I had envisioned months ago, but somehow it felt more real, more grounded. As we ate, I opened up to them, truly opened up. I told them about how Christmas had always been the one time I felt close to my family, how I clung to traditions like they were lifelines, how I decorated the cabin every year, planned every meal, bought matching scarves not because I needed control, but because I thought that's what love looked like. Showing up, giving, making it magical. Julia, Monica said gently, you've been the glue for so long. You didn't realize how many cracks you were holding together. Adam nodded. And sometimes when glue steps away, things fall apart. Not because the glue is wrong, but because the structure wasn't stable in the first place. Their words hit deep. I had spent so long trying to earn love through effort, through fixing, through bending over backwards. But true love, true family, shouldn't require that much proof. Later that night, after Monica and Adam left, I checked my messages again. This time, not from guilt, but out of curiosity. Buried among the missed calls and manipulative texts was a voicemail from my cousin Lena. Hey, Jules. I just wanted to say, I've been seeing what's happening online and I don't buy it. I know you, and I know how much you've done for everyone. If you ever need someone to talk to, or just want to vent, I'm here. It wasn't much, but it reminded me I wasn't as alone as my family had made me feel. The next day I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend Christmas Eve curled up in resentment or replaying old betrayals. I accepted Monica and Adam's invitation to attend a Christmas gathering at his parents' house, a casual open house where friends and neighbors came and went. No pressure, no politics. That evening, as I stepped into the warmth of a home filled with laughter, the scent of cinnamon and twinkling lights, I felt something loosen in my chest. No one asked why I wasn't with my real family. No one whispered. No one judged. Instead, they asked if I wanted cider, if I liked spicy gingerbread, if I played board games. I found myself laughing, really laughing, as Adam's mom roped me into a round of holiday trivia, and Monica danced with a group of kids in front of the tree. For the first time in years, I felt accepted. No strings, no expectations, just presence. That night, walking home under the quiet hush of falling snow, I realized something powerful. Maybe family isn't defined by shared blood or last names. Maybe it's built in the quiet moments, over takeout, over laughter, over people who choose you even when they don't have to. I still didn't know what Christmas Day would look like. I wasn't sure how the rest of the story would unfold. But I knew one thing. I was no longer begging for a seat at someone else's table. I was building my own. Christmas morning arrived with a soft snowfall, the kind that blankets everything in white and makes the world feel quieter than usual, almost sacred. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching Penny chase snowflakes in the backyard, when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then picked up. Julia, it's Sean. Please don't hang up. His voice was calm, too calm. What do you want? I asked, not hiding the edge in my tone. I wanted to talk. Can we? I didn't answer. He went on anyway. Look, things have gotten out of hand. The posts, the texts, the threats. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We were angry. Yeah, but now we just want to fix things. I stayed silent. Lacey's pregnant, he blurted. I blinked. What? She's pregnant. We found out a couple of weeks ago. We were going to tell the family during the trip to Montana. That's why we've been so stressed. That's why we really needed the stability. I took a deep breath, steadying the whirlwind of thoughts spinning in my head. Congratulations, I said, flatly. You don't sound happy. I ignored the bait. If you've known for weeks, why wait until now to say anything? There was a pause. I don't know, he finally said. We didn't think it would come to this. No, what he meant was, they didn't think I'd ever push back. You wouldn't really throw your pregnant sister-in-law out, would you? He added quietly. And there it was, the guilt card, the manipulation dressed up as sentiment. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I'm not throwing anyone out, I said calmly. You have 30 days. You've had notice. You have my parents. You have jobs. You'll be fine. But, Sean, I cut him off. Lacey being pregnant doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't change the fact that you excluded me from my own family. It doesn't erase the lies, the party, or the fact that you used my home without respect. I could hear the shift in his tone, frustration creeping in. So that's it? You're really going to kick us out knowing she's pregnant? You're heartless. I exhaled slowly. No, I'm setting a boundary. And if that feels like cruelty to you, that's not my burden to carry anymore. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone in my hand, a strange mix of emotions washing over me. Grief, anger, sadness, but also, strangely, peace. I wasn't immune to the pregnancy news. Part of me, maybe the old Julia, wanted to cry, to feel ashamed, to question everything. But the Julia sitting in that chair, wrapped in a wool blanket with a dog at her feet and a steady heart in her chest, knew better. Motherhood didn't make someone morally superior, and pregnancy wasn't a free pass to trample over people's boundaries. Later that day, the announcement went public. A glowing photo of Lacey holding a tiny pair of baby booties. The caption was a masterclass in passive aggression. We're starting a new chapter, even if some people chose not to be part of it. We'll raise our baby with love, gratitude, and grace, even when it's not returned. The comments exploded. You're glowing, Mama! Anyone who doesn't support you doesn't deserve to be in your life. Family is who shows up. Period. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself, because I had nothing to prove. They could spin their version, but I knew mine, and it was grounded not in bitterness, but in truth. That evening, as I sat down to a quiet Christmas dinner with Monica and Adam, my chosen family, I raised a glass to something new. Not the holidays, not the drama, but to peace, to space, to boundaries that held, and to never apologizing for protecting them again. 3 days after Christmas, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox, again, but this time it wasn't bluffing. It was a formal letter from an attorney representing Sean and Lacey, complete with a file number, legal letterhead, and claims that I had violated their rights as tenants. The tone was harsh, accusatory. It alleged harassment, retaliatory eviction, and infliction of emotional distress. And of course, sprinkled in for effect, client is currently pregnant and under emotional duress due to unlawful treatment by the landlord, who is also her sister. I sat on my porch steps with the letter in hand, the cold creeping through my coat. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion that even now, even after all the manipulation, the exclusion, the lies, they still found a way to paint themselves as the victims. Still, seeing it all in writing made my stomach twist. I texted Adam immediately. Me. New letter. This one looks serious. He called within 5 minutes. I read it, he said after I forwarded it. It's garbage. There's nothing in here that would hold up in court. But it looks real, I said, swallowing hard. They have a lawyer now. And that lawyer is hoping you'll be intimidated into backing down, he said. That's all this is, a scare tactic. He went on to explain that my written 30-day notice was perfectly valid, that changing the locks after they had vacated the premises was legal, that packing and securing their essentials and giving access to the rest of their belongings through agreed-upon times was, in fact, more generous than the law required. Emotion doesn't win court cases, he added. Documentation does. And you have it. His confidence grounded me again, but the stress stayed. Because even when you know you're right, being painted as the villain by people who once called you family still hurts. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and reread the letter. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to understand who they were becoming. Or maybe who they always were, beneath the smiles and thanks and, "We'll only stay for a little while." The next morning, I did something different. Instead of reacting, I prepared. I photographed the packed boxes still in my basement. I printed my original notice and the texts I sent to my parents. I made a spreadsheet of expenses, utilities, repairs, damages. I even compiled screenshots of Lacey's social media posts that contradicted her claim of homelessness. And then I filed everything into a red binder labeled simply evidence. Adam had warned me to keep my responses minimal, professional, and never emotional. So I followed his advice and sent one single email to their attorney. My client has acted within her full legal rights as a property owner and has issued proper notice. We consider this matter closed unless escalated through appropriate legal channels. Then I shut my laptop and exhaled. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because I was mourning. Not for Sean or Lacey, but for the illusion I had clung to for far too long. That family, by default, would protect you. That blood meant loyalty. That being kind would eventually earn you kindness in return. The next morning, a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was soft, measured. "Julia, it's me. I know things got messy, but this is still your family. You've made your point. Maybe it's time to forgive and move forward." Move forward? Like none of it happened? Like the party, the betrayal, the lawsuit were just holiday hiccups? I deleted the voicemail because moving forward didn't mean pretending. It meant protecting myself. And for once in my life, I was doing exactly that. January passed slowly, like frost melting off old windows. Sean and Lacey didn't contact me again directly. Instead, they sent my father to coordinate the pickup of the remaining boxes. He came alone one Saturday morning, looking older than I remembered. His eyes were tired, not from age, but from disappointment. Maybe in them, maybe in himself. We didn't say much, just exchanged nods. I pointed him to the basement. He didn't ask to come upstairs. He didn't try to change my mind. When he left, he paused at the front door. "I hope you're doing okay," he said softly. "Your mom, she doesn't understand. I'm not sure I do either. But I know you're not wrong." That was the closest I got to an apology. And honestly, it was enough. By mid-January, the house was mine again. Not just legally, but spiritually. The energy shifted. It felt lighter. I reclaimed the basement, scrubbed every surface, repainted the walls, rearranged furniture. I even got a new espresso machine, just because I could. I also started therapy. Hamilton, my therapist, listened patiently as I untangled the knots of obligation and guilt I had carried for years. I cried in that little office more than I'd cried my entire adult life. But I also laughed at my own people-pleasing habits, at the absurdity of apologizing for being too generous, too organized, too much. "Being related to someone doesn't entitle them to you," she said one day. "You're allowed to say no without a permission slip." Her words stayed with me. So did the ones Monica whispered to me on a quiet evening. "You didn't lose your family, Julia. You just stopped shrinking yourself to be allowed in the room." By spring, something inside me had bloomed. I hosted my first dinner party. Not for a holiday, not for tradition. Just because. The guests were people who saw me, really saw me. Monica and Adam, Lena, my cousin who stood by me, neighbors who had checked in after hearing rumors, a few coworkers I had finally let into my real life. As we passed around bowls of homemade risotto and glasses of wine, laughter bouncing off the walls, I looked around and realized this was family. Not the kind that shames you when you set a boundary, not the kind that weaponizes your love, but the kind that honors it, the kind that listens, the kind that stays, even when there's no obligation. And as the night wore on and Penny curled at my feet beneath the table, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe, seen, home. Not the kind of home you're born into, the kind you build brick by brick, with truth, with choice, and with people who respect the walls you've painted and the doors you've locked. So if you're watching this and wondering if you're too sensitive or too strong or too much for the people who call themselves your family, maybe it's not you. Maybe you're just finally learning how to be whole in a house that only ever wanted you to stay small. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to build something better. If this story touched something in you, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary with family? How did it change you? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true life stories about resilience, boundaries, and becoming who you were always meant to be. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Thank you for listening. And remember, family isn't who shares your name, it's who shares your truth.